What up, you guys? Welcome back to Pro Publications YouTube channel. On this channel, we talk about zines and DIY publishing. And today, I want to talk about the Valiant comic book layoffs, and also just kind of emote a bit because there was the Tapas layoffs, the Oni Press layoffs, and the DC layoffs. And I want to talk about things that the mainstream publishing companies are doing that I think are kind of ruining comics, ruining their own business and their own industry, but as well things that they can learn from the zine community that they can implement to, I guess, lure like sequential art lovers like myself back into the fold. And so that's kind of what this video today is going to be about. But first, let's roll the clip. Feral Comics is the comic book zine anthology that I publish. This is filled with underground subversive comics by different cartoonists from all kinds of places. We are always looking for new contributors and do pay for contributions. Also, new readership, $20 for 1 year subscription or $3 for an issue. So the Valiant layoffs doesn't surprise me. I was a big fan of the Valiant reboot, followed right from issue 1 to like somewhere in the 20s. It was a great read. Then they had Divinity, which was another great read. So you had the Rye series, was an amazing pulpy sci-fi read. Definitely loved it. This idea of like this primitive group kind of going against this cyberpunk Japan, and Rye being this hero that then realizes that he ultimately is helping kind of this fascist regime inside of Japan. And so then he works with these primitives to basically destroy cyberpunk techno Japan. Amazing sci-fi. Then you had Divinity. Divinity is without a doubt one of the best sci-fi comic books I read in a long time. Loved it. Loved the lore, loved the art. Masterfully done. But just like any other business, you start seeing some dollars walk in. What do? You try to take advantage of the situation. But in doing that, sometimes the quality is offset by the quantity. Now that might be fine on certain aspects, but what wasn't fine is that you can tell in the comic books they started diluting the Rye issues to stretch them out, right? So a comic book that could have easily been one issue became 2 or 3 issues, and in that way they started to show disrespect to their readership. They viewed it like we were dumb, silly, and like the fluff was enough, and that just wasn't gonna work for me. So I stopped buying Valiant comics. Now that's the Valiant situation. The DC situation was more that they relied heavily on their IPs, and they still do. And they're absolutely correct that people that buy Batman comics buy them for Batman. But is that readership sustainable for a company? And what I mean by that is that readership that want to read a Batman comic because it's Batman really the kind of people that are going to show up every month for comic book publishing? I don't think so. And if it is, I honestly think that these publishing companies have done themselves a disservice because they put all their eggs in one basket, as opposed to having more fringe art, art premises, and art experimental sequential art, series that call to someone like me and call to someone like you. They're literally backing movies, animated series, live actions, toys, video games, things like that. That's what they're putting their eggs in. They think that's who's gonna show up every month to buy comics. And I don't think that's the case. And I think we were seeing that with all the layoffs, that that's not necessarily the case. Frank Miller's company now that's coming out, I think is going to be a beacon to a lot of people that really like sequential art and really want to see it expanded. And we're going to show up and show out for that. I know I am. And a lot of times when the big two or just major publishing companies do these kind of fun, experimental sequential art like events, we show up and we show out. Like a prime example of that is going to be The Prophet Remastered from Image. That looks fun to me. That looks like a fun read. And it's not even that I like the character. I have the original Prophet run, but it's that point of I haven't reread those. I don't retouch those. Like, they're not comics that I care about, honestly. They're something that I bought in my youth because Image was the it, and I haven't touched them again since. This idea of having different artists from page to page reinterpret the first issue, I think is brilliant. And it sounds like a zine, right? Here goes a prime example of something that a major publishing company could do that right now, if they did this, would absolutely kill the game. IDW, if you're listening, take notes. They should have an anthology of different creators doing their own Ninja Turtle stories. I think that'd be brilliant. And in fact, I know it's brilliant because someone already did it. And it was a collective of zine makers that did this Ninja Turtle fanzine where they did their own interpretation of what the Ninja Turtles would be like, you know, now in an older era. It's that point that that's the kind of fun, inventive, and exciting thing that every major publishing company needs to have. You don't have to put all your eggs in one basket, but these are things that you should do and you should have, because the people that show up and show out for sequential art, we're not being drawn in by Batman. We're not being drawn in because now there's 40 quadruple stories that you have running concurrently with the same shit, right? And another point, Oni Press is in a different situation, right? Oni Press is McDonald's art. No one loves it, no one hates it. It's just flat, right? They try to be for everybody, but in doing that, they mean nothing to no one, and that's also a problem. And that's one of the things that the mainstream publishing companies need to strive away from. Someone needs to pick up your comic book and either love it or fucking hate it. If they're just okay with it, then you failed. And once again, like, you don't have to put all your eggs in one basket. But this is something that the zine community does well, where they create these premises for this sequential art or for written prose or whatever it might be. But they create these premises, and then it's that premise, and you want to see how different artists interpret that premise. That's one of those things that zinesters do all the time, where we create a premise and we say, this is the idea. Now you hand that idea to 100 different artists and you ask them to show you what that means to them. And I think that that's brilliant and fun, and you can see that artistic energy in there, and it's fucking so refreshing. So anytime you get a zine like that, these anthologies that have been coming out as of late, fucking love them, man. And that's my point of, like, that's something that the major publishing companies need to start implementing into their overall strategy, because that's the kind of stuff that are going to bring people that like art into your fold. So, like, all these layoffs that are going on too, though, as a zinester, all it tells me is that there definitely is a shift in what people want from their sequential art. And I think that Frank Miller's company is probably going to be that beacon for a lot of us, that a lot of us are going to fluctuate to, because we want to see this fringe, experimental, sequential art series. We want to see artists be artists again. Sorry, cat walking. But so that's one of the things that I think that these major publishing companies really need to start factoring in and trying to work on. This idea that, like, you need to also have comic books that are meant to be just comic books. And there should be comics just for the sake of that comic. And there should be comics that can only be read as comics. So going back to the example of The Prophet remastered, right? That can only be a comic. How do you make that a movie, right? That can't. But that comic book, this idea that from page to page, you're watching different artists interpret the same story and the same character. It's fucking fun. It's fun to read. I don't even care about that character, and I'm over here talking about this comic. And I'm amped for that comic. And it's like, why? Because I'm amped to see this experimental expression of sequential art. And that's kind of what I think they need to get back to, right? And have that for the core people that love sequential art, and then have the more mainstream things as a gateway drug into the more fringe shit that, like, once again, that I make and that you make. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. Just wanted to shout out all the artists that are losing their jobs right now, whether it be Oni Comics, DC, Valiant, whatever it might be, even the folks that are losing their positions in Tapas. Like, all you folks, man, I wish you guys well. I know times are tough, but that's why we have to build our own industries, you guys. Alright, man, thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Lates.